November 15, 1935, the inauguration of the Commonwealth of the Philippines, the final step to freedom. The United States has decreed by law that after 10 years as a Commonwealth, the Philippines will be granted independence and finally become a republic.
The policy on independence of the United States was conditioned not by Philippine issues, you see, but issues specific to American interest.
So, beet farmers, vegetable farmers, tobacco farmers, vegetable oil farmers, of course, American labor, ganyan. So they suffered during the Great Depression. And the American farmers began to see that one of the reasons for their suffering and their poverty was the competition from Philippine agricultural exports. So in 1934, there were now more than 50 bills in the U.S. Congress to provide independence to the Philippines to get rid of the competition.
The crowds go viva and mabuhay at 8:58 that Friday morning as U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's proclamation of the Philippine Commonwealth is read out.
Commonwealth of the Philippines as ordained by the Congress of the United States. Hereby
Then Quezon takes his oath of office as President of the Commonwealth.
and conscientiously fulfill my duties as President of the Philippines.
Sergio Osmeña is proclaimed Vice President, and Frank Murphy, the last of the American Governors General, becomes the first High Commissioner to the Philippines. Not present were three headliners of history, ancient and modern: General Aguinaldo, Bishop Aglipay, and Sakdal leader Benigno Ramos. Aguinaldo and Aglipay had run against Quezon for the Commonwealth presidency. They never got to first base. Benigno Ramos had led his Sakdal peasants in an uprising to stop the proclamation of the Commonwealth. The hapless peasants got slaughtered. Ramos escaped to Japan, where he enjoyed asylum.
Nakikilala ng mga pinunong pisante ng Sakdal na ang problema ng bayan nanggagaling sa relasyong pang-ekonomiko ng Estados Unidos at ng Pilipinas, yung tinatawag natin na free trade relations.
Very much present at the inauguration of the Commonwealth were the rising stars of Philippine politics: Manuel Rojas, Benigno Aquino, Quintin Paredes, and the dashing Enrique Magalona, whose lovely teenage daughter, Susan, was the sweetheart of the nation. Also vividly present on the scene were the Moro Datus and their retinues, fierce-looking peacocks in tight red trousers, rainbow jackets, and green turbans. Manila was crowded with thousands of visitors for whom it offered a variety of entertainment. A roadshow screening of A Midsummer Night's Dream with Mickey Rooney and Joe E. Brown, a Tagalog gala movie, Awit ng Pag-ibig with Rosa del Rosario and Domingo Principe, the MGM super hit Broadway melody of 1936, starring Robert Taylor, reigning matinee idol, and at the Santa Ana Cabaret, dubbed the world's biggest dance floor, a live show had Miami Salvador doing Hawaiian numbers and Bayani Casimiro dancing with the Diaz sisters. At the Rizal Memorial Stadium was a big basketball game pitting Charlie Blonde Bombshell Bork of San Beda against Primitivo Martinez of Santo Tomas. UST won that game. And downtown, the entire Plaza Santa Cruz had been turned into an open-air public ballroom. And so went the inauguration of the Commonwealth of the Philippines. Elsewhere in the world, this was also the time when the Italians were bombing Ethiopia, the Japanese were invading China, and Hitler was rising to power with the Third Reich. Those Commonwealth years from 1935 to 1941 are what we call peacetime, an achingly nostalgic period. And rightly so. Pandesal costing only 5 centavos for 7 pieces. Deluxe movie houses were Cine Ideal and the Avenue Theater, admission costing only 45 centavos each. And you could ride from one end of Manila to the other on the streetcar, the tranvia, and spend only 5 centavos. Or how about a steak or a turkey dinner at Tom's Dixie or Plaza Lunch for only 1 peso? Leather shoes were selling for only 10 pesos a pair. You could even rent a house for 20 pesos a month and fly from Manila to Baguio for 25 pesos on Asia's first airline.
If you earn 20, 30 pesos a month, okay na yun. So, generally, throughout the country, small town life was very nice. And it was very peaceful.
No wonder a lot of Filipinos wanted the Commonwealth to become a permanent Philippine-American relationship. No independence in 1946 was the cry of Hilario Camino Moncado and his group of Mother America Forever.
Sa paniniwalang kung maputol yung umbilical cord, no, separating us from the mother country, the United States, magkakanda windang-windang ang buhay natin, lalo na economically. That is why even Manuel Quezon was of that sentiment.
Meron pang mga iba na natatakot na kapag tayo ay naging independyente, ang grupo nila ay siyang magkakaroon ng kahirapan, madi-discriminate, at kabilang sa mga ito ay mga Muslim.
War broke out in Europe, but in the Philippines, how confident we were in mabuhay si General MacArthur and his Filipino trainees. For Douglas MacArthur was building up a new Philippine army composed of very young recruits in khaki shorts and coconut fiber helmets. The young were everywhere on the Commonwealth scene, and we were all yelling their praise.
Mabuhay ang New Youth Party!
Mabuhay si Arturo Tolentino!
Mabuhay si Carmen Planas, Manila Sweetheart.
Mabuhay ang College Editors Guild!
Mabuhay si Arturo Rio, si Brad Carillo.
Mabuhay ang NCAA!
In the boondocks, the cry was
Mabuhay si Asidillo!
on one side, which hailed the be-mustached bandit as a Robin Hood. On the other side rang the cry of
Mabuhay si Lieutenant Jesus Vargas!
honoring the gallant young soldier at whose hands perished the Robin Hood of the Tagalog Greenwood. But in general, the young were activists only in the groove. And supremely as the shadow of war darkened,
America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night.
the street cries of the period were Julian and Hi-Yo Silver Away. And how light-hearted they sound now that we know what stark horrors waited just a step away. When the real thing came, it was the morning of December 8th, the feast of the Immaculate Conception.
A date which will live in infamy.
As the Japs bombed the country from Aparri to Davao and from Baguio to Intramuros. But our spirits remained high and confident.
In a way, we felt the Japanese weren't strong enough. Secondly, we felt that the Americans were very strong, and we could see their aircraft flying every day. We could see their soldiers marching in the streets. We believed that the Americans were strong enough. And besides our own, the USAFE was formed, and the Philippine Army was called to the colors. And so we felt that they were ready.
Alas, we didn't know that in one single raid on Clark Field, the Japs had destroyed the entire U.S. Air Force in the Philippines. We didn't know that the U.S. Asiatic Fleet had sneaked out of Manila Bay, abandoning the Philippines. nor that the Japanese blitzkrieg from Lingayen down the Central Plain would bring the Jap troops to the very gates of Manila in a week or so. We were still saying, give America a couple of weeks and the Japs will be finished.
The U.S. in fact had not developed its army throughout the 1930s, partly because of the Depression, partly because of other reasons. And so the U.S. forces here were particularly ill-equipped, underprepared. And we had the Philippine Army, which was created because of the National Defense Act, but even that was also not prepared. Consider that soldiers were only given 5.5 months training, and of that very little was actual combat training.
When Manila fell to the Japanese on January 2nd, 1942, or barely 24 days after the war started, the whole country gasped in disbelief. Mother America had not proven to be God after all. And what follows is even more bitter.
This is the voice of freedom.
Bataan is besieged.
Bataan has fallen.
Bataan falls. The death march begins. Corregidor is besieged. Corregidor falls. And with that fall, the complete conquest of the Philippines. The guerrilla movement, the rise of the peasant hooks, and what seemed a new betrayal by the elite with the return to power of such eminent so-called collaborators as Jose P. Laurel, Claro Emerrecto, Benigno Aquino, not to mention such highbrows as F.B. Icasiano and others.
Many of them really saw their positions as kind of intermediary between the Japanese and the people, and therefore kind of softening the impact of Japanese occupation.
Tindig Aking Inambayan became our new national anthem. The proclamation of the Second Republic and of Jose P. Laurel as its president had us all smirking at this ironic fulfillment of the national dream. At last, independence, but under a Japanese-sponsored puppet government. At last, the Filipino has come home to Asia, said the Japs and their collaborators. Instead, the Filipino gets slapped, kicked, and mauled by his Asian brethren. The Japanese have supposedly come to liberate us, but what they actually liberate is our rice and sugar and all our food. Our homecoming to Asia is celebrated with a general famine. We eat camote and crushed corn and kangkong, if we are lucky enough to find any. By 1944, the sidewalks of Manila are littered with the bloated bodies of men, women, and children dying of hunger.
The Japanese became brutal from mid-43 onwards. One reason for this was that the guerrilla resistance movement was becoming stronger. It was becoming more unified. They were attacking the Japanese. And because of that, the Japanese began implementing things like the zona system.
Several blocks in the city were close to incoming or outgoing movement. And the Kempei Tai, the Japanese military police, would be there. They would search every house, investigate, interrogate every person until they caught the guerrilla. Talagang mabigat.
But soon, the Americans are landing in Leyte. MacArthur has actually returned as promised. On Christmas 1944, Manila gets showered with handbills announcing the imminent liberation of the capital. And on February 3rd, 1945, residents of the Malacañang neighborhood wake up to behold the stars and stripes waving from a palace flagpole. Yes, North Manila had been liberated.